We are back in session. We are now under item B, under approvals, EC 70. That is the recommendation of award to SMG for management and operations for the City of Albuquerque Convention Center, Civic Plaza, Albuquerque Baseball Complex, and the Convention Center parking garage. I move approval. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Pena. Are there any questions? Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have someone from city come up and speak about the contract and what happened and how it was as far as the nomination for SMG.
Ms. Nair?
Thank you, Council President Sanchez, Councilor Winter. So the RFP process occurred before we came to office, but as I understand it, it was, advertised and heard before committee. SMG was the only applicant for the only bidder and was selected. And the form of contract that you see before you is the version that was part of the RFP. However, as is customary, we formed a negotiation team to work through any details that may occur, that may come up, or that we might want to clarify after this council makes its decision if it decides to move forward. The contract is a 5-year term with subsequent 1-year extensions, and it does cover the convention center parking lot, and the baseball fields and Civic Plaza.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And I don't have a problem with SMG. I do have a problem with the length of the contract because the last 2 contracts since 2003 have been 3-year contracts. The 2003 was with 2 1-year add-ons that had to come to the council. The 2009 was also 3 years with 4 extra years, so it was a 7-year contract. And the administration didn't have anything to do with this contract, the new one. It was the old administration. And so then they came up with a 5-year base contract with 5-year add-on. And I was at the meeting for the executive board of Visit Albuquerque, and the discussion was there, and they felt that it was really too long. And I just feel it's too long. I think SMG does a good job. They've got some more responsibility, though. They've got that baseball field, and then they've got the plaza. And so those are the issues that I have. Now, I heard something that if the council decides that this is too long and we were to reject it, I think that the administration could come back with, let's say, a 7-year contract, 3 years and 4 additional years. And then someone made the comment that, no, it would have to be rebid, so I need to have some legal opinion on if that's possible.
So, Council President Sanchez and Councilor Winter, I'll turn this over to legal in just a moment, but I did want to clarify that it's a 5-year base with subsequent 1-year extensions, and it's also terminable at convenience, as are most city contracts, at any time upon notice. And I will turn it over to Mr.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, Jennifer Bradley from City Legal was actively involved in the process, and she's prepared to answer questions. Thank you.
If you would, please state your name for the record.
President Sanchez, Councilor Winter, this is Jennifer Bradley. I'm with the City Attorney's Office. I represent the Purchasing Division. And for once, I don't have my purchasing, you always see me, everybody sees me with my purchasing binder with me. I don't have it, so I can't read the actual language from it, but it is a yes or a no here, but we always could negotiate contract terms after the fact, if it's more beneficial for the city.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I have no desire to send it back out for an RFP. I think SMG does a good job. I just think this is an outlier after all the years we've had to have 5 and 5. And I do understand that it can be terminated, but when you start, then you can start looking at legal issues also. So that's just my 2 cents. If anybody else wants to respond, thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to follow Councilor Winter on that. I think I recognize that SMG was the sole offerer on this contract, but wonder about in previous years, and I was looking up the previous record, in previous years when we had not bundled a convention center, a baseball park, parking, and a civic plaza, and other sort of, yes, they are event management things, but they have specialized requirements. When we had not bundled those, we received more offers for the convention center. We had this discussion, this council will remember with the last administration when the baseball complex opened, about who was the best person to manage this, and I think we had a number of responders to that contract as well, and we chose, based on the old administration's recommendation, to allow SMG to temporarily open the facility just because we had a relationship and services with them, and it was easier than setting up a whole new IT infrastructure and everything else for a 6-month contract. But I think what I'm asking Ms. Nair is, has this administration considered whether all of those things should be bundled together, or whether it would be better for competition and taxpayer dollars to have broken those out based on individual uses, and for, say, if SMG won 3 or 4 or all 4 of those, for them to bundle that, or for us to do that after the fact?
Mayor?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Davis, this administration has not revisited the process of the past administration. Certainly, if this were to be rejected at this point, we would have to do that. I know that to Councilor Winter's point, we're in year 8 or 9 of a 7-year contract because of the length of time in procurement. And I'd also welcome, I know we have some members of the committee who were on the selection committee here, if anybody wants to speak to that. But unfortunately, I just don't have the information of how that was decided to be bundled by the previous administration.
Thank you.
Councilor Davis?
Thank you.
Any other questions from this council?
Yeah, Mr. President, just Mr. Zamont, I know that he was on the ad hoc committee representing the council, and since you're the experience in the room here about how it was presented to you all from the previous administration.
Well, Mr. President, councilors, I was on the ad hoc committee along with Jerry Romero and Diane Dolan, also representing council, Tanya Armenta, Lola Bird, Chris Chavez, Ted Shogri, Viola Cunningham, Jennifer, and a couple of people I'm not going to remember at this point. By the time that the ad hoc committee was selected, the RFP was a fait accompli. The RFP had been developed and was out there, and we were asked to evaluate those that had responded. I believe I made some comments, and the record of the discussions will show that I believe Diane Dolan from council suggested that perhaps combining the baseball field might have limited the number of firms that were able to respond. I think we also made the remark and expressed a little concern that the RFP hadn't been advertised as widely as an RFP for this level and importance of services probably, in some opinions, should have been. It was advertised on SciCommNet, and it was published in the Albuquerque Journal, but I think there were a couple of people on the ad hoc committee, myself included, who felt that perhaps this should have been, there should have been a more individual outreach to larger providers across the country as well. Having said that, the ad hoc committee's job during the process was to simply evaluate, since we had one provider or one respondent only, was to evaluate whether or not that provider had the qualifications to operate the convention center, the plaza, the parking garage, and also the regional sports complex. And the committee was unanimous, myself included, that SMG does have those qualifications in spades. The question of 5 years, well, a 10-year potential total didn't come up as I recall, but I understand from reading the RFP and also just from experience that the last 5 years of that contract, because of the size of the annual contracts, will have to come back to council each time for approval.
Last thing, Mr. President, is just, I just think, as long as I've been on this council, I know that we had a lighting contract for more than 10 years But this is the first time I've ever seen a contract this long, so that's it. Thank you.
Counselor Davis.
Mr. President, if nobody else has any comment on that, I just want to go back and look really quickly. I think just looking at the old contract, and I could be wrong on this, it looks like 1.4 million over the every 2 years with the renewal, which is about 750,000. I think there's been an escalation, but that was just for the convention center, and we've certainly added a lot more to it. I would make a motion to reject EC 1870. So that we could send that back and recommend hopefully that we could split that out and look at other offers, considering the concerns we had about notice and publishing and the limited number of people we would have there. I don't have a concern with SMG's performance in the current contract, but I do think it's in the interest of taxpayers that we take a look and be sure that everyone has an opportunity to look at these. And so make a motion that we reject EC 1870.
Counselor Davis, there is a motion currently on
I'm
the
sorry.
floor to accept,
I'm sorry.
and let's go and vote on that, but I'd like to make a couple of comments. Let's go to Council Vice President Harris first.
Sure, thank you. And hearing from Mr. Zaman, I'm just wondering, normally, do we usually look at the underlying scope of the design of the advertising of the contract and what was considered, or normally, I thought we normally looked at whether or not the process was done correctly, and if the bidder who got the contract was qualified versus another bidder who was competing. And do we actually have the authority to say we're not going to accept this contract because we don't like the way the process was done? Is that normally one of the things we look at? I don't know, and maybe Mr. Zaman and maybe Sarita can talk about that.
Zaman?
Mr. President, Counselor Harris, the council does have the ability to reject any EC that proposes approval of a contract, but it has to justify the reason that it's turning down that contract. And at that point, the administration would be able to choose from other respondents and make another recommendation. In this case, that becomes problematic because there was only one respondent. And at that point, you would think, and I'll defer to either Ms. Nair or Mr. Aguilar, that the RFP process would have to be opened again.
Aguilar?
President Sanchez, I believe that's correct, but let me ask Ms. Bradley one more time just to confirm.
Go ahead.
President Sanchez, councilors, that's correct.
Council Vice President Harris?
Thank you. So if I can kind of restate what Mr. Zaman said. So the only reason that we have the ability to require the contract to sort of be re-advertised is because there is only one qualified person who bid or submitted a proposal, I guess. And so by rejecting that proposal, we could require the whole process to be done again. Is that sort of a good summary of what I've heard?
President Sanchez, Councilor Harris, that's correct.
Okay, and I guess we heard some of the misgivings from council staff about this contract. I was wondering if Ms. Nair might have a different take on this.
Ms. Nair?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Harris, again, we can't speak to the process of RFP, but I can tell you that if the desire of the council is to reject this and require us to go back out to bid, the short-term result is that we would have to ask SMG to enter into another amendment. They wouldn't be required to do that since their contract has expired, and we do run a little bit of a risk that we don't have someone to manage the baseball fields during the busiest time of the year. They've been a great team player. I wouldn't expect that result, but it does leave us in that place of whereas now we would, if you approve this EC, we have some room to negotiate with SMG. Ironically, if you reject it, we are tied to the old terms that we have with SMG currently to hold us over through another RFP process.
Mr. President?
Mr. Zaman?
I'm sorry to jump in here, but just a thought, and that is if this EC could be deferred, we could reach out to SMG and see if they would even be amenable to those sorts of negotiated changes to the contract.
Councilor Borrego? Councilor Pena?
So when the administration came in, you looked at all of our programs and all contracts, et cetera. And I was just wondering, Was there ever an audit on SMG or on the convention center and how it was managed?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, not to my knowledge. We did have SMG come in and present to us a rather extensive presentation on the statistics of their, rates of success of booking all the facilities. They presented their anticipated bookings for the new fields on the west side and have been amenable to providing any information we've requested. And I'm sure we could get whatever information the council is interested in receiving in that respect.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that we haven't had any real problems with the SMG in terms of the contracts that we've had, the contract that we had in place already. I mean, in terms of management and production, marketing, et cetera.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, not since we've been here, there have been no problems. I know that the Visit ABQ folks did have some input into the contract, and we have been working with Ms. Armenta in that respect and spoke about it in the board context. But as I said, we would be able to negotiate some of the finer points of the contract after this vote if you decide to move it on.
So just if we did what is being suggested in terms of re-advertising an RFP, how long would that process take? Approximately.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, I think to reformulate an RFP and then have it on the street long enough and then go ahead and make that decision, we're looking at 3 to 4 months.
So we're looking at August, possibly September, probably longer.
Best case scenario?
6 months maybe. Do we have any major, well, I know that we do. Do we have, we have major conventions coming to town in the next 6 months.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, I think the biggest issue would be this first season, first real season of the West Side baseball fields, their softball fields that would be under their management and is sort of a new venture.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Pena and then Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just think it's kind of unfortunate. The way I read this is that it's a 5-year contract, so with 1-year renewals. So at 5 years, so it's not a 10-year contract, it's a 5-year contract. And then we have the option for the 1-year renewals. I just think that, it's kind of unfair to be having the discussion up here about SMG, and yet we put out an RFP, they responded, they happened to be the only respondent, and now we're having issue with that, and then we're going to bog down the process. I've worked with them when we've had the Holly Home event, when we had the Albuquerque event. I think they're very professional, they're courteous, they worked really well with us, they were really supportive of the efforts from the city of Albuquerque, some of the things that they didn't necessarily have to do, but they, extended themselves to make sure that we accomplished these events. And so for me, I'm very supportive of this contract, and I don't believe it to be longer than a 5-year contract.
Councilor Jones, and then we will go to Mr. Zaman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think there's one big issue here that's kind of not coming to the surface. I don't think the concern at all is a 5 with a 5. I think the concern is that there's a very strong potential that this, if we do a 5 and a 5, that this contract will extend beyond the possible term of this administration. And I think saddling a new administration, be it in 4 years or 8 years, it's still, this contract goes beyond that term. And I think it would be a good policy to look at that and see if you can negotiate and get that second piece of it. The 5-year firm, I understand, no problem with that. 5 years is 5 years. But then the second 5 years, in my opinion, is a huge issue. I think it's inappropriate for us to bind a new administration in 8 years to have to deal with this.
And I believe what was said by the administration, it's a 5-year contract with 5 1-year extensions. Is that correct?
Council President Sanchez, that is correct.
And I personally would hate to go back to square one. I think that we've seen the track record and the work of SMG. They've been very reputable. They've done a good job. They've been very professional. And for many of the events that I've attended at the convention center, I've been out to the new baseball complex, and they're doing an extremely good job. And if they were the sole bidder on this contract, you know, I believe that the ad hoc committee followed the rules, the regulations, and felt that they were entitled and should, because of the work that they've done in the past with their proven track record, should be given that 5-year contract. Again, the additional 5 years will be 1 year at a time, and that will be reviewed every year. And if they don't perform at year 2 or 3, we can basically terminate that contract anyway. But again, we could also face a lawsuit now based on us rejecting this contract. And I think that becomes problematic also, because SMG, if we turn this down tonight, when they have followed the rules and regulations of the city of Albuquerque and the procurement process, could turn around and sue Albuquerque for what we did tonight as a council. But again, I have seen the work that they've done. I feel very optimistic. I feel very confident that they are going to do the right thing. And Councilor Winter, I think you also made the statement that you didn't want to see this go back to square one, where this would go back out for bid again.
Mr. President, and I don't have an issue with SMG, I just have an issue with the 5-year contract. And I think that's a huge issue. It's never been done, and so we're extending the time period, and I can't read the past administration's mind and why they did that. They really didn't go take a national search to do it. It was probably minimal notification for it, and so I have an issue with the 5 years.
And again, I think the contract expires, Mr. Zaman, on June the 1st. Is that correct?
Mr. President, councilors, that's correct. The existing contract expires June 30th of 2018, and so Ms. Nair is right. July 1st, we're going to have extensions in place to continue to operate. But Mr. President, councilors, I'd like to make sure that I get on record that the statements I made were my concerns about process. I wasn't speaking for the entire ad hoc committee. I think that I can speak for the entire ad hoc committee based on the discussions and say that the ad hoc committee had no problem with SMG, their qualifications, or any of the personnel that they have on board. There were just some comments about lack of dissemination of the RFP and the process as it evolved.
Thank you, Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll just pick up where I left off there and say I agree. I think I don't have an issue with the vendor either in terms of their performance for what we've asked them to do thus far. My concern shares a little bit of everybody else's here. This contract would be unusual for the city, and I also think I'm still concerned that we're combining a whole bunch of things in such a way that it might lock out other viable people from providing us an offer that might be better beneficial to the taxpayers. I do think transparency and having an opportunity for more people to do that is sort of our burden here, to be sure that we've done that process. And I want people to have integrity in the process, that this wasn't bundled in such a way so as to help one particular vendor over another on somebody's way out the door. I don't have any indication that that's the case, but I certainly can see how someone would look at that. And so I would rather see us reject this today, vote no on the motion on the floor, and allow us to go back to a process that'll open its door for more options. And we may be back here in the same place, but it sure would make me feel better that we evaluated all those options and addressed some of those longevity concerns, and that we had enough people to bid so that we knew we were getting the best person for the job for all of those facilities.
Council Vice President Harris.
Thank you, and Council President Sanchez mentioned, and I don't know if this is a real risk or not, that perhaps there could be litigation if we do reject this tonight. I mean, could SMG say there's no basis to reject and you have a contract with us? Is that a real concern, or was that just kind of a guess by the Council President might be incorrect?
Aguilar.
President Sanchez, Councilor Harris, we don't have a contract yet formally executed. We're in the process right now of negotiating terms. So as far as the bid process, I mean, litigation's always a possibility, but I could defer to Ms. Bradley, but I think that that's the correct answer.
So I guess what you're saying is that because getting a contract with the city includes this process, so they don't have a right to demand that this process goes a certain way. Am I kind of summarizing perhaps? Correct.
President Sanchez, Council Vice President Harris, correct?
Counselor Benton, and then Counselor Borrego.
Well, I feel like the concerns of the council have been heard by the administration, and the administration does have some latitude, is what I'm hearing, to bring these forward as part of the negotiations. Did I mishear that, Ms. Nair?
Mayor?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Benton, I think where the sort of not clear line is if we were to go back to SMG and say we want to do 3 years instead of 5 years, they may say, you know, we really bid this out based on the presumption of 5 years, and we expected to recover our costs in a certain way. And they may withdraw their bid, which would also send us back to square one. So while we are happy to negotiate and do so aggressively on behalf of the city and the people, we have to be wary that at some point SMG could walk and say, this is not what we signed up for and we want to rebid.
Well, that makes sense, and I think that's probably the risk more than us being sued. I mean, SMG is a known quantity. I think what's new is the softball piece of it, the baseball field, softball complex. That is new. I wasn't privy to all the details of the selection committee, but that is somewhat new, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's what's giving concern up here. That's probably my only concern about this contract.
What I would like to do then, councilors, is to withdraw my motion and ask for a 2-week deferral to see if the administration can work out details on an agreement on the contract. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Mayor.
Council President Sanchez, just looking for clarification, because I think we've talked about a couple of things tonight. I think Mr. Zaman talked about the question of whether SMG would be open to having an extension of the contract during a rebid process. And I think we also talked about negotiations on the duration of the contract. We also talked about some other issues related to the contract, and I know we have our own list of issues, so just want to make sure that I understand what the request is from council in terms of speaking to SMG over the next 2 weeks.
Councilor Benton.
Just speaking for myself, you know, one question I would have is, you know, we certainly are somewhat behind the 8 ball with the terms of management of the softball complex, and isn't the senior games going to be using that as a venue? So that's another issue. Yeah. But I would think if we were going to negotiate anything at all at this late date, it would be something of the term of just that piece of it. Would that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, of just the softball piece of it to keep them in. Let's see how they do in the short term. This is the one area in which we don't have a track record with them. That would be my question to see if that could be raised.
And I agree with you, Councilor Benton, but I think there are some concerns that the administration may also have that they can get worked out that should also be looked at.
So, Council President Sanchez, let me just make sure that I get what you want. You're looking for an answer to the question of whether SMG would allow their bid to stand even with a 3-year term?
That is correct. Councilor Pena.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for Ms. Neer. So by us approving this EC, we're not looking to finalize a contract. We're actually entering into an agreement with you to go ahead and negotiate this. RFP is awarded and you're going to negotiate the contract, correct?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Pena, that's correct, subject to what I spoke about earlier, where we have to sort of stay within the bounds of what was bid out.
Correct. And so the RFP now includes the softball, the baseball fields, correct?
Correct.
So by us even having the discussion about perhaps eliminating it could violate some kind of procurement, correct?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Pena, I do believe that trying to change the scope of the contract at this point in terms of the facilities to be managed would be problematic from a procurement perspective.
And based on the time frame that we put the RFP out for 5 years with 1-year renewals, could that also be argued?
Yes.
So again, with that, I think that we just either need to approve this EC or not, because I think once we start getting into the weeds, we open up the city of Albuquerque to some litigation.
And I would hope that we can maybe get Mr. Zaman and Ms. Yara to work closely with Ms. Nair and the administration to come up with a plan that's equitable to all parties involved. But I don't think we're going to be able to work this out this evening, but we still have some time if we defer this for at least 2 weeks. Councilor Harris.
Yes, thank you. And I think Councilor Pena made an excellent point that if we do negotiate a 3-year term on a 5-year RFP, then other potential suppliers of these services could have a lawsuit against the city because we're violating our own RFP process. You know, for me, I think that these ad hoc committees and the advertisement, I mean, there's no one perfect way to do this. I think if it was adequate, it sounds like it was, although maybe it could have been better, that I think we just approve this thing and move forward. So I'm not going to support the deferral.
Councilor Borrego.
I'm also going to support the deferral, Mr. Chair. I think that, you know, there's an expectation when we do business and we put out an RFP, and that expectation needs to be very clear, and I think that's the job of the administration, is to create those RFPs and to move forward with them, and our job is to decide whether or not they've done it adequately or not. And I think for us to try to, you know, change sort of the rules in the middle of the game, it takes the predictability away from business, and I think that that's a real problem. So I think, you know, I definitely think that if we can't in the next 2 weeks try to negotiate something, then, you know, it's not really council's job to look at the RFP and to create it or not create it. I mean, that's the administration's job.
We have a representative from SMG here this evening. Would you like to make any comments? Welcome, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President, City Councilors. You know, SMG did respond in good faith to the RFP that was sent out. We've also, in good faith, extended the contract because we believe in what our mission is here in the city of Albuquerque, downtown. I do just a small comment on the baseball complex. There was an RFI for the baseball complex, and there was only one respondent to that RFI, and that was SMG. So, and we're doing very well out there. So any sort of metrics that the city council or the administration, which we've already shared with the administration, and I think a little bit with city council, is the success that SMG is having at the baseball complex. And SMG is the leader in the industry, professional venue management. It is a sporting venue. So, of course, we're at the behest of the city of Albuquerque, the administration, the city council. Obviously, we'd like the EC to go through so that we can then start negotiating the contract. And my understanding is that an approval of this EC gives the administration and SMG the opportunity to begin negotiating the parameters of the contract. So if there are any questions for SMG, I stand for questions.
Councilor Benton?
Actually, I don't have a question for SMG, but I see that Visit ABQ representatives are here. I don't know if you have an interest in weighing in on this at this point. Thank you, Mr. President.
And please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the council. Tanya Armenta, President and CEO of Visit Albuquerque. Appreciate this opportunity to speak. Did serve on the ad hoc council committee with Mr. Zaman and others. At this point in time, I would love to say a couple of things. SMG is a great provider for the city of Albuquerque. We work very closely with them. We have a great working relationship. We've worked, both Jose and I have worked very closely in the last two and a half years to improve on that relationship. It's been a successful one. We're seeing great momentum. We're seeing great strides. I do want to say that as Ms. Nair already indicated, that our organization, both myself, our members of our board, executive committee, indicated that there were some things we'd like to see in the contract, because we did not have input in the RFP process. The industry didn't really know the RFP was coming, so there wasn't industry input. There are some things now, especially with the 10-year contract, that we want to ensure just that there's specificity, that there's additional detail put into that contract. But the administration has guaranteed us that they will take that input into consideration, that we can even serve on a contract negotiating committee. So I feel like we can find the right kind of the final mix for the best of the destination. But I do want to underline SMG is a great provider. We have a great working relationship. There is good momentum. However, it's important to keep in mind, these are economic generators for the city of Albuquerque. These were built not just as operations of facilities, they were built to be economic generators. And that's really important that that's in that contract.
Thank you. Council Vice President Harris?
Thank you, and thanks for expressing your concerns, but would you like the RFP to go back out so that you could have input in the baseline RFP, or would you like the council to approve this contract and then start negotiating now in the terms?
Mr. President, members of the council, clearly tourism and conventions is a very bright spot for Albuquerque right now. It's really something that I think we can all be very proud of, both public and private, working very strongly together. I do find that this is an unfortunate predicament that we find ourselves in terms of this discussion, and there were things that potentially could have prevented this in the past. I do think that our organization would say it's not in the best interest to go back out to bid. SMG is the leader. I think if we can find the strength in the contract, can add some specificity in the contract, I think it will behoove all of us to just move forward for the good of the destination.
Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a question. I just want to make another comment. The council really doesn't negotiate this contract. The administration negotiates the contract, and then you have an ad hoc committee. And apparently the ad hoc committee got this contract from this vendor with a 5-year, a 10-year contract, basically. And so the only time that the council can really look into this is when it comes to the council for approval. And so that's the issue that I have. And so I don't think we're out of line to say that contract is too long. And if we reject it, go back to the vendor, change the years on the contract, and bring it back. And so that's what we're asking. It's not putting the vendor on trial here. It's the 5-year, the 10-year contract. It's unusual, and I think we're going down the wrong slope to award that contract.
Councilor Davis.
Yeah, I think we're going around in circles here, but so let me keep going. We're gonna. I don't see a purpose of us deferring tonight. I think the question is whether we think the RFP was properly created, which we will not change in 2 weeks. I think if the council approves this, the administration will move forward with the guidelines and how it was done. If we think that the RFP perhaps could have been done better, which I do, and could have been done more appropriately, I think we simply reject this, send it back. And we know there's an urgency. We've heard that from the administration. I think there are plenty of community folks who are now paying attention and will be more than happy to weigh in and help us move this as quickly as possible. So I would encourage us to reject the deferral and also reject the contract so that we can move forward on a process that be sure we checked all the right boxes and includes all the right voices.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. We have a motion and a second on the floor for EC 70 for deferral for 2 weeks. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Those opposed? No. That fails on a 2-7 vote.
There's a motion for approval pending, right?
No, that was, I'd like to move EC 70 and recommendation of approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Council Vice President Harris. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? All those opposed, say no. That carries on a 7-2 vote. Okay, let's go to item EC 118. That is approving an agreement with New Mexico Bioscience Authority to create a bioscience community, bioscience ready program. I move approval. I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Counselor Benton. Any questions? See none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Mr. President, I apologize. I know but I do have one for
Counselor
Ms.
Davis?
Armijo. I know we spoke about this earlier. We wanted to clarify from the write-up. Ms. Armijo, if you could help me a little bit, or Ms. Nair, if you want to defer to her. I think really quickly, the application, from the write-up, the application request for $100,000 offsets lease expenses to occupy space in downtown for 1 year, but the monthly lease cost was estimated at $500 per month in the write-up, which would be $6,000 a year and would make a $94,000 difference. Can you help us figure out what that difference is?
I will
defer
defer
that.
to Director Jaramillo.
I was going to defer that to our CAO. That's one question that I didn't come prepared to answer, but I can find that. I can get that.
We can
Answer
go to
for
the other
you.
one really quickly. I think we do
Sure,
have an answer.
absolutely.
Ms. Nair and Ms. Armijo, really quickly, I think the allocation here is for $100,000 that comes out of FY18, and in the write-up, it mentions that this was something that was begun back in August. But by the time it's getting here now, it has deliverables and goals that are expected to be completed by the end of FY18. I'm curious, if we have $100,000 that was needed to do it in August, can they do it in 30 days or less to get at the end of FY18, or would the administration need to extend that grant agreement?
We were assured that they could get it done in 30 days. Yes, sir.
Okay. And by the time we get that signed, we can get all that work done?
Good question.
I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm just concerned that what was an idea in August seems to be rushed through for EDAC dollars for FY18. Ms. Armijo, do you know how many other pending projects are pending request or approval for FY18 EDAC dollars that have not yet been funded?
We don't have any EDACT projects pending, but what we have funded is the Calle Cuarta that's been approved. That was approved in May of 2017, and the Fuse Maker Space was also approved in May of 2017, but we do not have any other projects pending at this time, Counselor.
And Mr. President and Ms. Armijo, how much funds are left in EDAC for us for the moment?
There will be, Mr. President and Counselor Davis, there will be no more project money left when these 3 projects are finalized. No more money.
Ms. Armijo, the reason I was asking, and I know Ms. Firth was working at this, was when the administration came in, there were a number of pending requests for EDAC-funded projects. A job training center, for example, in the International District that was denied because we didn't have appropriate funding. And now I see we've sort of jumped this ahead to put this on top of the list. I'm curious how, and I understand there were about 6 pending EDAC-requested projects that were not funded, and with this same dollars, and now we're rushing to spend the $100,000 on this project that may or may not be able to complete. I just want to be sure we have a process to accommodate those other ones or to review everything appropriately.
Ms. Nair?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Davis. So to your point, this didn't really jump the queue in the sense that it had been on deck since August and was asked for immediate approval just so that we could get, as you mentioned, the deliverable done before the end of the year. This Bioscience Authority really fits within our economic development strategy in that it focuses on an industry cluster where we have a large potential for growth, to create economic-based jobs, to build a pipeline for some of the other employers in our region. And it's a smart strategy that we didn't embrace every strategy of the previous administration, but this one we thought was a good idea, and that's why we're asking to move it forward.
Thank you. Ms. Nair, if you could just help us. If we approve this tonight, can we help get some assurance from the administration that we can sort of go back in FY19 and take a look at some of these new unfunded projects that had been kicked off? And I think there was a concern from some of the community groups that maybe they didn't get that we needed to help explain our process a little better so that they could go to the EDAC board and others to do that. And I appreciate the opportunity. I understand. I agree with this. It's a good idea. I'll vote for it.
Council President
But we want to look at a process.
Sorry.
Ms. Nair, go and proceed.
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Davis, absolutely, we agree. There's a need for greater transparency in all of our economic development programs. It's one of the top priorities for Director Jaramillo, and so we will definitely make that a possibility.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Borrego?
Ms. Nair or Ms. Jaramillo, the $100,000 that's being looked at, is that a one-time amount? Or is that, I mean, does it look for leverage down the line? And And I guess my second question would be, and if so, I mean, how do you sort of track, you know, what, I mean, how do you track what's coming out of this? So the first question is it a one-time amount?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, it is a one-time amount. It is in the nature of a startup grant since this is sort of a new project for the area, and as an authority, it's bringing together multiple organizations. We do have a plan for tracking the outcomes, not just in this, but in all of our economic development contracts. To the extent you're suggesting that maybe we haven't always done a great job with that, I think you're right. And we do need to place more emphasis on tracking not just sort of participation, but actual outcomes and moving the needles in all of our economic development contracts. That is a priority for the department.
What would be, I mean, like, how would you know that this was successful in a year or 2 years? Or, I mean, what would be the timeline that we would be thinking in terms of, you know, is this really creating what we're setting out to do?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Borrego, so since this is just the one-time funding, we would be looking at them to meet all of the marks in terms of their deliverable and the scope of work in the current contract.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nair. We have a motion and a second on the floor for EC-118. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under final actions. The first item is item C, Councilor Jones, O-15.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is adopting amendments to the Integrated Development Ordinance for certain dimensional standards in low-density residential zones, and there will be an amendment. So first, I'd like to move O-15.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Pena. Councilor Jones, do you want to move the amendment?
Yes, and then I would like to move amendment number 1.
Second.
And amendment number 1 is changing some dimensions. I think you all have copies of this. It's changing some dimensions on setbacks and some facades for garages, mostly garages, and also the availability of 2- and 3-car garages, and also some, I think that's about it. So it's basically changing some of the dimensions and the setbacks for garages.
And we have 6 individuals that are signed up to speak. I will call the first 4 speakers. You can come to the front and be prepared to speak. The first speaker is John Garcia, followed by Garrett Price, followed by Blake Whitcomb, followed by Scott Schreiber. Welcome, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of City Council. John Garcia, Executive Vice President, Home Builders Association, Central New Mexico. While we respect the efforts by council, city staff, and the development community to update the city's development ordinance, we do have genuine concerns about changes to certain design guidelines related to garage widths and setbacks. After much discussion with council staff and others, we're hopeful that the amendments presented by Councilor Jones will be adopted tonight. Thereafter, we can all move forward with really trying to drive and support the IDO. With us tonight are other builders and developers. We chose as a group not to delay the discussion with too many people coming to the podium, but I speak with the authority of their proxy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Next speaker, Garrett Price. Welcome back again.
Thank you for having me back. Good evening, Council President, City Council. Garrett Price, President of Price Land Development Group. Again, I'm here just to support the amendments and the floor amendment sponsored by you, Councilor Jones, and you, Councilor Sanchez. I applaud you and your staff and planning staff on the hard work that's taken place leading to this meeting. We met almost a month ago to address our concerns, which Councilor Jones had facilitated that meeting. I believe, Councilor Benton, you were out of town. Since that time, we've addressed a lot of issues, and frankly, I believe the progress can be shown in that those issues that were most concerning to us, we asked for a grandfather clause in order to implement and in order to adopt those changes into our business models as it takes a lot of work to change the architecture of a home, the engineering, and frankly, the hard work with staff and council has eliminated that need for the grandfather clause. That is a huge hurdle to overcome. And so for a variety of reasons, we ask for your support this evening for the floor amendment as proposed by Councilor Jones and Councilor Sanchez. I'll stand for any questions that you may have. Or sit
Thank you.
down. Okay, thank you.
Blake Whitcomb?
Council President Sanchez, councilors, my name is Blake Whitcomb. I'm with Hunt and Davis law firm. I'm here representing Rayleigh Homes, Paul Allen Homes, and Eastside Development LLC. As you're probably aware, Rayleigh and Paul Allen develop homes all over the city. Eastside Development is putting through a larger than 300 lot subdivision in southeast Albuquerque. That subdivision will generate approximately $100 million worth of economic activity in the city. If these amendments don't pass, specifically the floor amendment, that project will not go through. For that reason, on behalf of my clients, I urge you to vote yes for this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Wickham. Scott, it's like Shybor, followed by Gary Eister, followed by Jim Strozier. Mr. Shybor passes. Gary Eister? Is Gary Eister here? And then Jim Strozier will be the last speaker.
Mr. Vice President and councilors, Nob Hill Neighborhood Association wants to thank you once again for inviting public input throughout this process and for using a lot of that input to guide your actions. There were two parts of the 018-15 in one of its iterations, at any rate, that caught our attention, and we wanted to bring one or two of these to your attention. The first one was the part about front setbacks in the RT zone that would become 10 feet. And of course, that would be very bad for areas of consistency for historic neighborhoods. We got with Ms. Morris, and she explained to us how in areas of consistency, the contextual standards tend to protect the historic neighborhoods where a destroyed house could be replaced, but it would need to have the same setbacks as the houses on either side of it. So with that in mind, we're not so concerned about that, but we urge you not to enact anything that would impair the contextual standards. I can see where a lot of my neighbors in other parts of town want to have more garages, and I don't think that my association has a great deal of input into that, but we did want to note that when there was an iteration that had a limit on the percentage of a front facade that could be garages, we could see where that had certain merit, because a garage is not occupied by people and it can't contribute to eyes on the street. But I don't think that we're going to try and weigh in heavily on parts of town that don't involve us directly. We'd like to see the...
Thank you, Scott. Your time has expired. Thank you. Gary Eister?
That was Gary.
Okay, Gary. Okay, Jim Strozier?
Yes, Mr. Council President, councilors, my name's Jim Strozier, principal with Consensus Planning, and I don't want to take much time. I just want to reiterate the support from the home builders for the floor amendment as proposed and put forth by Councilor Sanchez and Jones. And I also want to thank the council staff, planning staff for the work that was done. There was a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion that went into addressing this issue. It's serious, and we really appreciate all the time and effort that went into getting this floor amendment that's proposed tonight, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strozier. We are back on the floor. We are still on the floor amendment number 1 to 0-15. Are there any questions? Comments? We have a motion on the floor for amendment number 1 to O-15. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Those opposed? That carries on an 8-1 vote. We are back on the bill. Counselor Jones to close. Or, excuse me, Counselor Benton.
Mr. President, I want to move a second amendment. That's the Sawmill Community Protection Overlay Amendment. It's in your bill books. This amendment makes changes in the Sawmill Wells Park Character Protection Overlay only. It restores the original regulation from the sector development plan that limits heights within 10 feet of an interior lot line. In other words, it requires a step back of the second floor, as was originally in that character, or in that sector plan that was changed.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second by Counselor Davis. Council Vice President Harris.
I want to see if the administration or David Campbell, if you have a concern about this or support it.
Mr. President, councilors, no, this is more or less a technical amendment and one that we would support.
Okay, any other questions?
Anyone from Sawmill here to speak about that? I'm assuming they want this, Councilor Benton.
Yes, Sawmill Wells Park neighborhood supports it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor for amendment number 2 to O-15. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yes. Opposed? That carries unanimously. We're back on the bill.
I have one other amendment.
Councilor Benton.
Did we pass that out? So this would be amendment number 3.
That is correct.
So while they're bringing that up, I'll describe it. This amendment would add back the requirement that the garage mass not comprise more than 50% of the front facade of a single-family home. It includes 3 exceptions. So there are 3 exceptions to this requirement. The first exception is for new construction and new residential developments on narrow lots. The 50% rule would not apply. The second exception is also for new construction and new residential developments. This increases the percentage would be increased to 60% of the lot frontage. And the third exception applies throughout the city and in all circumstances. If there is a 50 square foot front porch provided, the percentage requirement does not apply. So those are the 3 exceptions to this, but otherwise this would restore the 50% requirement with those 3 exceptions, and but would not make a change to the. We would still have eliminated the garage setback requirement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second by Councilor Gibson. Any questions? Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask someone from the home builders to come up and tell us what effect this could possibly have on them as they see it?
Price?
Good evening, Council President Sanchez, Councilor Jones. So although Councilor Benton's amendment is, I think, going in the right direction, this is language that we looked at over the last several weeks. One reason why we had concerns about this, Councilor Jones and Councilor Benton, was not so much for the larger builders and master plans, because although it does have the same exemption language that we considered previously, one of the key issues is that it would prevent, because for anything less than 2 acres, any project less than 2 acres. So let's say it's a family wanting to design their dream home, and they want a 3-car garage because they have a growing family. If it's less, and a 3-car garage with typical massing takes about 30 feet. So in that scenario, anything less than 60 feet on a lot or a project less than 2 acres would be prevented in this scenario. That was our major concern when we were sitting down with your staff and planning staff. That's a concern. Councilor Benton, I live and I've grew up in your district. I'm raising my family there. I understand the intent, and they're all very admirable, and I would suggest that there's other ways to incentivize and look at promoting infill outside of just the garage definitions. And maybe that's a bite at the apple that we can all do collectively down the road, but the key issue is advocating for those builders, semi-customs or families wanting to design a custom home in any part of the city would be prevented from doing a 3-car garage. And that's a challenge, particularly for those families that otherwise would have to go pay for a storage unit, or they've got, you know, I have twin boys. Someday we're going to have a lot of cars coming into the house. So I live in that district. I see the issue, and I understand it. But right now, the other key issue outside of that is the grandfather clause. There's no grandfather language in Councilor Benton's bill, and so the immediate impact on people with a preliminary plat would be today. And that was a big issue that we are concerned about, vested rights and the legality of somebody with vested rights with a preliminary plat or a lot that they can build on today. So, Councilor Jones, is that satisfactory?
Councilor Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Price, I know we talked about, and I'm sure I'm hoping you still agree with this, that we have basically a year within the way the IDO is set up, that we, Councilor Benton and the Home Builders Association and the interested parties can negotiate out some of these things, and perhaps this type of issue can be fixed so it fits in the lots so they don't lose their rights, but it still protects some areas where it would be better if we didn't have this kind of thing. Do you agree that the home builders will come in good faith to negotiating table to try to help fix this?
So, Councilor Jones, I believe I can speak on behalf of that organization, having been on their board for 10 years. The floor amendment you have today is something that we feel very comfortable with that we can adapt to. Unfortunately, Councilor Benton's proposal, although I think well-intended, causes us a lot of concern. And we would like an opportunity to help on a solution to promote infill in the right parts of the city and implement this over a longer period of time. So we would be there at the table to help. However, as it's written, Councilor Benton's amendment is a huge concern today. But I think there's a way for us to help achieve that goal down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
You're welcome.
Council Vice President Harris?
Thank you. And I'm going to vote for this amendment today, but I think I support something like this in the future. And my concerns, it seems kind of like a compromise effort, but it reminds me of a little bit of the compromise that R.J. Berry, in the last budget cycle, after he vetoed the bill, he announced a compromise without talking to the councilors who he was trying to compromise with. He just said it was a compromise. So I think in this regard, I think what I encourage Councilor Benton to do is to sit with the home builders and actually compromise. And I'd be encouraged to see that and be encouraged to vote for it if there was an actual compromise between you guys. And just bring a separate ordinance, I guess, and run it through these folks and sit down, and talk it out, and work it out.
Any other questions? Councilor Benton?
Yeah, just in response to Councilor Harris, I mean, I have been at the table with the home builders and talked about these things, and in fact, some of what's in this amendment was offered at the end of the IDO adoption process, and were rejected by the home builders, so I don't know if there's any middle ground here to be had. I think these photographs illustrate the issue. And I think the big issue to me is twofold. One is walkability, all right? And the ability to walk and enjoy a neighborhood is greatly diminished by 3-car garages fronting the street. I would also take exception to the idea that you just can't build a 3-car garage under this amendment. There are many ways to build a 3-car garage other than having all 3 doors facing the street, especially on a small lot. These photographs also indicate another aspect, which is probably even more important, and that's crime prevention through environmental design. Anyone who is involved in urbanism and urbanist design knows what we're talking about with this. Everybody at APD knows what we're talking about with that, and that's eyes on the street. When you have a 3-car garage on a narrow lot, and there's no front door facing the street, everything's forced around the corner, you're going to end up with a street with very little visibility, very little monitoring of what's going on the street in front of the lot. So we've built a lot of subdivisions like this. I'm not denying that they sell. I'm not denying that people want to be able to store all sorts of things in their extra garage space. But it's a question of what we want our neighborhoods and city to look like. And this does represent compromises that we had already offered but were rejected. I'm not going to deny that. They were rejected by the home builders representative. But at the same time, these do, again, on the larger developments and the developments that to which many of the home builders are planning, they are exempt because they are larger than 2 acres. But the important issue here, I think, are those two questions. So I'd urge your consideration, and I think it's an important, very important decision point as to where we're going to go as far as how we look in the future. And if we can't do that, I'm not sure how we do it exactly. Maybe we do it geographically or something, but community planning areas would be the only other option.
Councilor Jones and then Councilor Davis, that was not your closing?
Thank you, Mr. President. And Councilor Benton, I do believe this needs to be revisited, and I think that we need to look at it as compromise, and maybe geographical is the answer, because I see both ways. I mean, I don't like to look at garages either, and every neighborhood is all garages. However, we're talking about an industry that only builds what they can sell, and they're not going to build something that they can't sell, which means we're going to have a lot of areas that should be developed or redeveloped that we've nixed that capability. So I understand both sides of this, and I'm not saying we kill this totally, but I do agree with you that this is something that we need to sit down and talk about. We can pass this anytime. We can come back and compromise and do something and pass it at any time. So that's what I would propose we do, and I would hope you would understand that I will work very closely with you and try to do everything that we can to come up with something that works as well as possible. All parties are not going to be absolutely 100% satisfied, but at least we can get closer. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr.
Councilor Davis?
Thanks very quickly, Mr. President. Thank you. And Ms. Morris, can you just remind me, we talked about areas of consistency a minute ago. We also talked about CPOs with Mr. Eister. This rule, for example, in an area that is not in a character protection overlay, that clearly has its own standards, but just an area of consistency identified in the comp plan, would this limit someone's ability to create a 3-car garage on the bottom floor in a neighborhood that doesn't have any others?
Mr. President, Councilor Davis, as written, no. This doesn't have any language that ties it to areas of consistency or contextual standards. The first 2 would really apply to new developments.
Right.
The third criteria is the one that would applies citywide, and we would probably see that exception used more in the infill situation. Right. Where maybe somebody had a smaller lot and they wanted a little bit more than 50% for the garage. Maybe they wanted to do a 2-car garage, and a way of doing that maybe in a custom situation or an infill situation would be to provide that 50 square foot front porch, and that would be where that exception would be used.
Thank you, Ms. Morris, and remind me, if we pass this tonight, this will be our rule. If by chance we were to defer this for, say, another meeting, and take a new look at that. The IDO, I guess technically we'd have another meeting before technically the new IDO goes into effect, but nonetheless, even if we pass it in a week or so, we've got the ability, because of the process we passed, to continue to update this over the summer for issues like this. I know that's not our ideal process, but it's not make or break. We could do this.
Mr. President, Councilor Davis, as council, you can make amendments to the IDO at any time, but the IDO does envision a process for annual updates. The IDO goes into effect on the 17th, and there isn't another council meeting before that,
Right.
that meeting.
Okay.
And so I think Councilor Jones had talked about looking at this as a,
Standalone.
maybe a larger task force over the next year as an annual update.
Thank you, Ms. Morris, and I hear both sides. I think there's differences in different geographic areas, and I think this is a good idea. I don't, for all the crime prevention, all the design, I think it's important that our old infill neighborhoods have a right and an ability to protect their character and not change that by one single house. At the same time, I think I'd be interested in maybe a deferral or a way to look at it in a broader context, because I don't think it's going to dramatically change plans over the next few months for somebody doing that work, especially if our home builders know this is still on the table. But I will defer to the sponsor.
Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Council Davis. I just want to make it very clear that this doesn't have to wait for a year to pass. The City Council can amend this and pass an ordinance at any time. It's just we have a setup for public also to be able to do this within a year's time, and they won't have to pay the fees that they would have to pay at a later date. So I truly believe that this is something we can look at again and try to get more input in different areas of town and try to make this work in the areas of town where it really does work. So I can't vote for this, but I can support working on it in a couple months. Thank you.
Councilor Benton.
Yeah, just one last, we'll wrap it up and vote on this. But just to make clear, in our zeal to pass the IDO, we did look over an incentive that was in our old zoning code for exactly this. Our old zoning code had, under R1, RT, and RLT zones, offered a reduced front setback, which we've already passed now without any trade-off, a reduced front setback as long as the garage is set back, and maximum 50% of the facade. So that was actually some pretty good policy that was an incentive and not a requirement. But if somebody wanted a smaller front yard setback, they could get it by doing this. So our old zoning code acknowledged that this is desirable, or else it would not have provided an incentive for it. But I think we should go ahead and vote, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor for floor amendment number 3 to Exhibit 1 to O-18-5. All those in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes? Those opposed say no? No? That fails on a 2-7 vote. We are back in the bill. Councilor Jones to close. Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would urge your support on O15 as amended.
We have a motion and a second on the floor for O-15 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. No. That carries on a 8-1 vote? Okay, 8-1 then. Okay. Okay, let's go and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item D, R-19, and that is Council Vice President Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move a do pass.
We have a motion and a second.
I see Paul Smith has been waiting around, and I don't know if we want to hear from Mr. Smith or Mr. Manicucci. Is there anyone signed up to speak? Okay, there is. Okay, well, we can hear from public comment, I guess, if that's the pleasure of the president.
That is fine. We have one individual signed up to speak. That's Paul Smith. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, which one? And I see staff is handing out something. Is there something that we could put on the overhead or for people, or is that possible for folks watching TV, or is it too big? Pardon me? Can we do it?
Mr. President, Councilor Harris, do you want the page that Mandy is handing out to be on the screen?
Yeah, I guess there's 3 that kind of show the the progression of the loss of landing area.
Okay.
And if I could, Mr. President, given Mr. Smith's position with the balloon fiesta, I think I'd like to turn off the 2 minutes.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry. President and councilors, my name is Paul Smith. I'm the executive director of the Balloon Fiesta. And as you might guess, I'm urging your support of R-18-19. The Balloon Fiesta is going to be enjoying its 47th year or 47th event this year. And our mission is to promote the city of Albuquerque, state of New Mexico, and ballooning. And we're planning to continue that well into the future. We've had certain issues over the years, one of which now Councilor Harris is trying to address, which is the lack of landing sites. We have had as many as 1,019 balloons in the year 2000, which frankly was too many, but our founder thought it was a great idea to have 1,000 in 2000. We now cap it at 550 balloons each year. The reason for that, there are several reasons for it, but one of which is the lack of landing sites for the balloons. It's always great to see the balloons launch from the field, and everyone seems to enjoy that. But the thing that we always have to keep sight of is every one of those balloons will need somewhere between half an acre and 2 acres to land, depending on the wind that day, depending on the skill of the pilot, depending on the direction they're going. And actually, that was really, I think, the basis for this. I think Councilor Harris has come up with some great ideas as far as how to preserve some of those sites. I'm always reminded of the old adage that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The best time for this type action was 20 years ago as well. I have here a picture that I took from my balloon back in 2006, which shows the site from Balloon Fiesta Park looking south, which is the predominant flow of wind from the park during October. And you can see the housing development in the foreground is Vista del Norte, and you can see a small square down here, which luckily Councilor Winters and then Councilor O'Malley had the foresight to purchase from the...
Go and proceed.
Thank you. Purchase for balloon landings and community park. As you can see from the site, from this angle, it doesn't look that large, even though it's 20 acres. There is some area just past that park, which is the Water Utility Authority. The other areas that look large and inviting back in 2006, the north end of Vista del Norte is now developed. That is commercial development up there. Over on the east side of the North Diversion Channel is Reeves Power Station, which, other than the fact there's a lot of power lines, which are very concerning to balloonists, there's also several acres of solar panels now. And then just past that is the west part of Journal Center. This is the predominant flow during Balloon Fiesta. It's from the north to the south. A lot of pilots will choose not to launch if the wind's going to be going any more to the south, to the southeast because of lack of landing sites. You'll see a lot of pilots, including my wife who flies the Wells Fargo Stagecoach, who decides not to fly unless she can get up high and get out to the west side because of the landing spots. As I said, every balloon's going to need at least half an acre to land, and some days it may be significantly more than that. Councilor Harris's idea of trying to preserve existing open space is a great one. Also in trying to encourage property owners to allow balloonists to land on their property is another great one. The fact that we can repurpose some of the parking lots, if there are some changes to parking lot ordinances where the poles are not all going to be 50 feet tall, where there's not necessarily trees throughout the middle of the parking lot, but extend those things out to the west, to the boundaries would probably be great, and hopefully give balloonists a place to land for years to come.
And thank you, Mr. Smith. And if I may, I think I proposed something like this, probably wasn't as detailed, I think about at least 5 years ago or so, and then it just kind of went nowhere. I think we have an amendment. Do we have an amendment, Tom? Is it in the iPads?
It is.
Okay. But one thing I was concerned about is making sure that this doesn't sort of just, we don't lose sight of how important this is and lose our energy behind it. That's why I'm also bringing it up before the ABCGC, which I think I did before. But, Tom, can you talk about the amendment?
Council President Sanchez, members of the council, yes, simply all it does is that we're going to go ahead and we've established, since the bill was first written, a structure to operate the task force, and that would be that the Balloon Fiesta would help set up the task force, work with us to set up the task force, help organize the meetings, kind of manage the meetings. Council staff would help with leading in the research that comes out of the tasks and jobs that come from each meeting, and working with the various other local agencies and departments within the city to help organize the reports and studies that may be required. It also extends the time period from, we were going to try to get it done in April. We realize now because of time, we're probably going to try to see if we can extend ourselves till the end of the year.
And Mr. Smith, would the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta be able to kind of bird dog this and jointly manage it with the City Council?
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Councilor Harris, yes, absolutely. It's obviously in our best interest, and we would love to do whatever we can to help.
Do you want to move the amendment?
I'll move amendment number 1.
We have a motion and a second for amendment number 1 to R-19. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We're back on the bill. Are there any questions or comments? Councilor Borrego.
Councilor Harris, thank you for having the foresight to look at this, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for being here this evening. I know it's kind of late. I very much appreciate the partnership that the city has with the Flood Control Authority also, and I would just urge possibly that, keep in mind that there are lots of arroyos on the west side, and possibly those are some areas. I had an incident the other day. These balloons go over my house on a regular basis. I mean, I'm outside on a regular basis taking pictures, and that's throughout the year. But I had an incident the other day where there was a balloon that hit my neighbor's house. And, well, it almost hit. It was pretty close. I mean, it was like within maybe a foot. And it went across to golf course and almost landed right on golf course. And it was a busy time. It was like 7:30 in the morning. So I think just having this, having alternative sites where they can land and they can land safely is really, really important. And I just throw that out as an idea, as maybe even in some of our arroyos as a possibility. Thank you. Thank you for being here, sir.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. Mr. Smith, I first want to thank you for the work that you've done over the years. You've done an incredible amount of work, and you've made you've tried to make it as safe as possible for balloonists. Like you stated earlier, there was over 1,000 balloonists that were going up, and now it's at 500. But we want to make sure that we can continue to grow this venue and not decrease it. But you've had the vision over the years, working with Councilor O'Malley, working with Councilor Winter, and the council that had the vision to buy that property at Vista del Norte. That was an important factor in purchasing that property, because I'm not sure where we would be today without the acquisition of that property. But I want to thank you for working with the council and making sure that got done. That was going to be a big box in our community at that location. But the community, you came together with the council, and we were able to acquire that property. But again, thank you for all your work and for your vision, because your leadership has proven that this venue and the Balloon Fiesta will continue to grow expeditiously year after year.
And the administration, Ms. Nair, do you have any input on this?
Council President Sanchez, Councilor Harris, both the mayor and I have been longtime participants in Chase Cruise, and we strongly support this effort.
Councilor Harris to close.
Urge your support.
We have a motion and a second for R-19 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Harris.
Councilors.
Okay, we are now on committee substitute R-22, Councilor Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is, and I'll move a do pass. This is just rescinding Committee Substitute R-09-344, which established a policy regarding a fee structure for renting space in city-owned community centers, health and social services, and senior centers. This was brought about '09, and I carried this bill, and it ended up we had one department that was following the fee structure, and then we had another department that wasn't following the fee structure, so it really didn't work. And so what this does is rescind it, send it over to the administration departments and let them set their own fee structure, and then bring it back to the council. And if the part that we want to make sure is if there is any fee increases, it has to come to the council. But I think mostly they're going to look at the policies. And so that's what the bill is.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any questions? See none. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now under item G. Councilor Jones and Councilor Benton, R-29.
I'll yield to Councilor Benton, if you'd like.
We have a motion and a second by Council Vice President Harris. We've also have a floor substitute. Is that correct?
Do we have a floor substitute on this?
Mr. President, Madam Councilor Jones, yes, there is a floor sub that was in your material that would need to be moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the floor substitute. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. We also need to move to suspend the rules, but before we do that, let's go to John Garcia. He's the only individual signed up to speak publicly on this agenda item.
And he's gone.
And I think Mr. Garcia has left the building. No, it's just, we need to suspend the rules for the purpose of allowing this resolution to be adopted at the same meeting of this evening, because it is a floor substitute. So did you want to move that? Councilor?
Yes, I moved that, and Councilor Benton seconded.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes, those opposed say no. That passed unanimously. We are back on the bill. Councilor Jones?
Urge your support.
We have a motion and a second to approve R-29 as substituted. Yes, Councilor Borrego.
Before we vote, do we have an opportunity to ask a question?
You may. Councilor Borrego. That's okay. You have that right.
I had a little concern with this at the beginning, but then I spoke with Mr. Melendres, and I just wanted to clarify that this is not amending or rescinding 270-1980.
Mr. President, Councilor Borrego, it is not at all. R-270-1980 is now embodied in the IDO itself and includes the traditional change or mistake rule and more advantageous as articulated by the comprehensive plan. This is dealing exclusively with phase 2 of the conversion process of the IDO and the council's legislative action in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for R-29 as substituted. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those opposed say no. That carries unanimously. We are now on the last item on the agenda, item H. That is Councilor Borrego, R-30.
Mr. President, councilors, this is a, let me get my paper, hold on one second. There is a property in my district, which is part of a larger development that includes a library and a multi-generational center, which Councilor Lewis actually began. And most of the property has been purchased except for one small sliver, which is this, I believe it's a 5-acre tract. And so what we're doing is we're amending the 2017 Action Plan and Program Investment Summary of the 2013 to 2017 Consolidated Plan to provide for funding for acquisition of this final parcel within this master planned area.
You want to move the bill, Councilor Borrego?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I I urge your support. I'd like to make a motion for R 1830.
We have a motion and a second by Council Vice President Harris. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of R-30 signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, those
Thank
opposed
you.
say no. That carries unanimously. And if there is no further business before this council, this meeting is adjourned.